Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Kansas State heading on the road to play BYU. And I think the national media storyline surrounding this football game is going to be two undefeated teams squaring off Saturday night. The big storyline for myself heading into this football game is the environment that we're going to see at night in Provo, Utah. It's going to be next to none. And I think this is one of the hidden gems in all of college football in terms of night games at BYU. I don't think it gets much better. And so the environment that we're going to see 10:30 Eastern time, it's going to be special. I'm going to have a cup of coffee ready for me at 10 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm locked in for this football game, fired up to get into it. Now, before we do it, as always, just want to give you all a massive shout out at these game previews and predictions. They're always a blast for the boys to do. The amount of support y'all continue to show, it means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, look, there's a reason that this game is inside of a touchdown on the spread. A lot of different ways this football game could go. I fully expect it to be very competitive. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with this Kansas State offense. Now, it's no secret the boys have been very high on this Kansas State team heading into 2024. And if you were high on Kansas State, you were probably high because you expect the offense to look like what we saw Friday night against Arizona in terms of an extremely dynamic rushing attack that you kind of marry the passing game with. I thought that was about as good as it gets from Kansas State. And I think you still kind of left some points and some plays on the football field Friday night, specifically with some of the pass catchers. That being said, it seems like Kansas State has kind of, for lack of a better term, found their identity and what they want to do on the offensive side of the football, right? Avery Johnson getting a little bit more involved as an athlete, which was something that we kind of stressed heading into that Arizona game. Look, I think there's this, false stigma around Avery Johnson that he's just a one-dimensional quarterback that can't really throw the football, but is a phenomenal athlete. Yes, he's a phenomenal athlete. Yes, he can get it done on the ground with his legs. Avery Johnson can sling the rock as well. There was a reason this kid was a top 100 national prospect coming out of high school. You see this kid dripping with arm talent. And yes, is he still working on pocket management and consistently being accurate with his footballs? Yeah, like any other young quarterback, he certainly is. But you see the arm talent. You see the ability to make so many different throws on the football field. And I thought Kansas State did a really good job saying, hey, yeah, we're going to be a run-heavy team. That is how we want this offense to look. But we're going to marry that passing attack quite well with our running game. And I thought, quite frankly, Avery Johnson threw a lot of good footballs that some of these wide receivers probably need to do a better job making plays for Avery Johnson down the football field. I think the second biggest storyline was getting Dylan Edwards more involved with the offense. We kind of said this heading into Arizona, like Dylan Edwards, it seems like every single time Dylan Edwards has a football in his hands, good things are happening for Kansas State. And I think they were still trying to find that balance of getting Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens, who is a phenomenal running back as well, and Dylan Edwards involved. I think they're still working on the recipe, but I thought you saw them make kind of an improvement in terms of the recipe and the touches that they want to give for all these playmakers on the offensive side of the football. 235 rushing yards against Arizona, 5.7 yards per carry. That was really, really clean from Kansas State. And I think one of the big keys that Kansas State has in this football game is potentially getting BYU kind of to the perimeter. You look at Kansas State and what might favor Kansas State in this football game is getting Dylan Edwards outside of the tackles in space, force BYU to have the speed to deal with Dylan Edwards kind of out in space on the perimeter. I think BYU is very, very good between the tackles. I think they have some physical linebackers that know how to take on blocks and kind of fire downhill. A matchup that could favor Kansas State in this football game is trying to get Dylan Edwards in space, getting Avery Johnson in space, kind of attacking this BYU team out on the perimeter, forcing them to be athletic enough to go to the boundary and make some of those plays. Now, you flip the sides to this BYU defense, they've been really dang solid. I mean, going on the road to play SMU and only giving up 15 points, this is a BYU defense that you can tell BYU does a really good job coaching their players. Nothing really comes easy for opponents on offense. And I don't know if BYU has a first round NFL draft pick caliber guy on the defensive side of the football, but it's a very well coached defense. They don't blow coverages, they don't blow assignments. And that kind of gets reflected on the scoreboard. Again, that's an SMU team that has a lot of firepower, can put a lot of points up on the board. Didn't score a touchdown in that game, have been really good in the red zone. So I think that's probably the storyline here is Kansas State might move the football, but when they do get into the red zone, can BYU hold them to 3 points and stay in this football game? Probably what you're looking at. Now, flipping the sides here, Jake Retzlaff's been awesome. And I think this was my biggest question mark. I wasn't like super high on BYU heading into 2024, largely because of the quarterback position. Jake Retzlaff's been really good, not only as a passer, but also a phenomenal athlete as well. He leads this BYU team in rushing yards. And as LJ Martin went down with that injury, you kind of had to rely on Retzlaff a little bit more in terms of what he could do with his legs, who he's a sneaky, very good athlete. BYU's been getting it done. I think the second storyline is Chase Roberts. I wouldn't say it's as extreme as the relationship Noah Fafita and T-Mac had, but you go to BYU's passing attack, it primarily is going through Roberts on the outside. Kansas State did a really good job trying to shut down T-Mac Friday night. I wouldn't say it's a very it might be kind of a little bit of a similar treatment in terms of how you treated T-Mac, how you might want to treat Roberts, because it is very clear that Retzlaff wants to go to Roberts in this passing attack. And I think the BYU rushing attack kind of dealing with some injuries at the running back position. We're probably looking at what running backs are healthy in this football game. How well is BYU going to be able to run the football? Then you look at Kansas State. I think, my biggest, I got two storylines here. One, can you get pressure on Jake Retzlaff? He's been a quarterback that has struggled when he's been under pressure. The turnover-worthy plays are massively higher when he is under pressure. And you look at a guy like Brendan Mott, who I thought was phenomenal against Arizona as that edge rusher for Kansas State. Kansas State wants to run a lot of rush 3, drop 8 and kind of keep everything in front of them. I wonder if Kansas State tries to heat up Retzlaff a little bit because of how much at least going back to last year, I think he's been a lot better this year, but has been struggling in the past in terms of turning the football over when he's been under pressure. I'm kind of interested to see if Kansas State going on the road here wants to heat Retzlaff up a little bit and try to force some of those turnovers. Kansas State been really good forcing turnovers on the year so far. BYU obviously struggling with some of the turnovers. That's a storyline that I'm looking at. Getting to the pick here, Kansas State coming in 6.5-point favorites. I think I like Kansas State instead of a touchdown, and this might have to do with just how high I was on Kansas State heading into this football game, but I look at BYU and say much better team than a lot of people expected they were going to be heading into the 2024 year. That being said, I think Kansas State is living up to kind of what I thought they would be heading into 2024. It is never easy to go on the road to Provo, Utah and win a football game. But I'm going to go Kansas State to cover the 6.5 points. I think BYU at home tries to grind down some teams. I don't think Kansas State gets grinded down here. If I were to guess, I think Kansas State might be able to grind down BYU a little bit. It's going to be a really fun game. Don't feel great about taking Kansas State in the points on the road, but I'm going to take Kansas State here. Fired up for this one. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.